Ben Leonard has no business training. In fact, his background is in ecology. Oh, and he's a self-confessed whale and dolphin nerd who had no interest in fitness until his mid-20s, when he decided to build a successful online fitness brand called Beast Gear, which, in its third year, turned over 6 million large ones. What a great story. It's an unbelievable episode 654 of the 14-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing Podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of beastly marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. And I do that through having a weekly in-depth conversation with a successful business founder who has kindly walked the path before us. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Back in episode 640, you and I caught up with award-winning LA realtor Danny Brown of Compass Real Estate, who'd won the listing to sell the original home used in the famous Brady Bunch TV series, America's second most photographed house after the White House. Now, that's a high-profile listing that any agent would give their eye teeth for. However, it didn't come without its challenges. At an asking price well above the local area's average, the original Brady Bunch home required 24/7 on-site security due to the stream of sticky beaks trying to grab a peek inside, making it a difficult place to live. Plus, short-term rentals and events may prove challenging due to its residential zoning. This left the ideal buyer being some kind of movie paraphernalia investor. Well, the Brady Bunch home is now sold, and I've got realtor Danny Brown on the line, literally in his car, driving to his kid's football game to tell us how, who, and how muchy. Welcome back, Danny. Did the campaign go as planned?
Not exactly as planned, but great to be back with you, Tim. How are you?
I'm good, man. Really good. And very excited to see where this story finishes.
Yeah, well, it's a funny story. We talked about it up front. There's so much hype in PR and media hoopla around this sale. I'll say the biggest thing about the sale that is fun for people to talk about and is all over the media is everyone is saying that Tina, the buyer, Tina Trahan, who collects homes for a living, she's married to Chris Albrecht, that used to be the head of HBO, and it's all public information now. Great lady, great couple. So it's all in the media that she got this great steal of a buy, and she bought it at 3.2 because we were listed at 5.5 million. But the reality is, when we priced the house, I told the studio that if we get $3 million or more, that's a home run based on the costs and the averages of the neighborhood, the homes in the neighborhood. And we ended up with 3.2. So it's a win. It's a win. But although Tina got a great deal too, and I'm sure she'll do wonderful things with the house.
Was Trina, Danny, someone who showed herself at the very start of the campaign? Did she come in at the end? Did you have her pegged as a top 3 buyer?
I had her pegged immediately as a serious contender because I know who she was. I know she invests in homes as collectibles. She has nothing like the Brady Bunch home, but she has significant real estate assets that have some interesting stories and history to them. She came in early and started the dialogue, and she was very hesitant to put pen to paper because her offer was going to be so much lower than the 5.5 asking price. So I had to spend a lot of time encouraging her and her agent, which was Frederick, Frederick from $1 Million Listing and Marcy Roth as partner. I had to constantly sort of handhold them and say, don't worry about it. Put in the offer because that's a fair price. What you're thinking, don't worry about our list price. And they didn't want to offend the studio. And at the end of the day, it took a couple months for them to actually write the offer. And once they did, the studio understood. The studio knew the value. We had been out in the market. We've gotten feedback from every buyer around the world, and everyone was saying the same thing in terms of where they thought value was, which was what I expected, the 3-ish range.
It is a big drop. I mean, the studio spent $2 million on renos, bringing it to its original Brady Bunch glory inside and out. You had 5.5 on it, sold for 3.2. How do you massage any client, much less a Hollywood studio, into accepting a $2 million drop in quoted price?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not easy, as you know. No one's happy to lose money on the net sale. But they bought this house in a bidding war with Lance Bass and 20 other famous, wealthy people about 6-7 years ago. The house was probably worth $2 million when they bought it. Mm-hmm. But due to the bidding war, they paid $3.5 million. They knew they were going to make their money up by doing shows and ancillary rights around the house and events. And that's what they did. They made all their money plus profits. So at the end of the day, this was more of like, hey, let's sell it. Let's give the funds back to, they donated it to some children's and housing charities.
Oh, nice.
And, at the end of the day, the studio was thrilled to get it off their books. They had it for a long time, and they did what they could with it over the last 6 or 7 years.
Danny, when you have a buyer like Trina on the hook, so to speak, she's an experienced real estate investor. She knows what she's doing. She's been in this space before. This is a great learning for any business owner, really. When you've got a buyer on a hook like her, what do you do? Do you sit back and let the magic unfold? Do you coolly sort of make these calls? Hey, Trina, how's it going? Made any decisions? What's that process look like?
Yeah, well, it was nothing like the, hey, Trina, have you made any decisions? It was nothing like that. There's a lot of relationship equity with Frederick and Marcy Roth, and there's a lot of back and forth in psychology and hand-holding real estate therapy with them and Tina to get her to the point where she was comfortable, even at a low $3 million range. She still, as she went through it, every step of the way, kept telling me, Danny, this is nuts. This is the worst investment of all time. There's no reason I should be buying this house, but I have to buy it because it's so great and it's one of a kind. So every step of the way, it was real estate therapy, which is just like medical therapy, really. You're dealing with emotions and psychology, and there's no pushiness. There's no closing. There's no get them to buy now or urgency. It's quite the opposite, especially in LA when the market has taken such a turn for the worse, and we're trying to sell a house that really can't be lived in.
So what's she going to do with it? Is it literally going to remain sort of as it has been?
So her plan is to keep it for charity events and raise money for charity events, use it for special private occasions. Really everyone else, there was people in her camp. There was people that were like collectors like her that wanted to buy the house, that wanted to keep it for events. And then the majority of the buyers were investors that were looking at ROI and return with short-term rentals. But in LA, Airbnb short-term rental laws are very cumbersome and complex and risky. The city's cracking down. So a lot of those buyers backed away because they didn't want to deal with the headache of having to constantly fight with the city to rent out the house. So that's the scoop.
Good on her. Danny, just I want to let you go because you must be almost at your kids' football, but you are now responsible for selling one of the most high-profile houses in America. As I said at the top of this chat, the second most photographed house behind the White House in America. You've sold properties much bigger, much more, worth tens of millions of dollars. This one, price-wise, was small fry, but it was high profile. Any new learnings for an experienced realtor like you?
I think the learnings are that there's always something to learn. In every situation, in every transaction, there's something new. There's a nuance. There's a read. There's a personality. There's emotional intelligence. There's always something to learn. And you can never use the same playbook time and time again and think you're going to get winning results. Just like in professional sports, you got to constantly strategize, adjust your playbook, adjust your approach, learn as much as you can, study as much as you can, because that's the best way to prepare for all the new things that are constantly coming at us. And there are new things, no matter how many years you do something, you're never really an expert that knows everything. And when you think you do, that's when you step in, mud.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. That's when you need to pay a visit to the Hall of Mirrors and take a good, long, hard look at yourself.
That's when it's time to get out of the game.
Hey, Danny, I've really enjoyed, following the whole story here and meeting your brother. It's been a great experience. I'm glad you got a result, maybe not the result your client wanted, but like you said, there are good reasons as to why.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I think everyone's happy.
Have you got any high-profile properties on the horizon in the coming year or so?
Yeah, we got a few we're working on. I have a high-profile one that's a Fortune 500 family now in Santa Monica. I can't really discuss too much about it. I have Eva Longoria's house in Beverly Hills that's going to be coming back on the market early in the year in the 20-25 million range. A few others we're working on in Malibu. Also, one of the studio heads is looking for something in Malibu. I mean, there's a lot going on at all times. So if you checked in with me in 3 months, there'll be other things.
What a super interesting life you lead, brother. Hey, Danny, thanks, mate. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, thank you for taking us on the Brady Bunch journey.
Hey, so great to hang with you. Tim, it's not such an interesting life. I'm heading to my boys' football game, and that's the best part of my day right there, brother. So there you go. Can't beat that.
100% agree with that. Family time all the way.
Let's talk soon. Keep in touch, Tim.
Thanks, Danny. See you, man.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
All right, on to today's special guest. Now, first and foremost, Ben Leonard is an ecologist by trade and a self-confessed whale and dolphin nerd. Yes, you heard right. But thanks to a health scare, he's also the founder of Beast Gear, which is an online business built on a laptop, in a cupboard, in his spare time, with an initial £1,000 outlay. 3 years later, Beast Gear was turning over more than £4 million, at which point Ben achieved business's Holy Grail and exited for life on a hammock. Well, that's not exactly true. He did exit for a nice little earn, but he's already in the throes of at least 2 more online business ideas. One, which I absolutely love. You'll find out a little bit more about that later in our chat. He's also written a book titled Quit Stalling and Build Your Online Brand. He is a busy and a very motivated fellow, and he's giving a copy of the book away with some goodies, which I'll share that link later on. Not the hard copy of the book, by the way. Now, in this chat, Ben generously shares where the idea for Beast Gear came from, how he's scaled using chatbots and Instagram, why a huge fitness brand tried to sue him and failed. Plus, he's a big fan of the business learnings of Sonic the Hedgehog. Love it. With all this success and with so many e-commerce stores out there, I started off by asking Ben whether it's too late for the average Joe to start one.
No, absolutely not, because it's too late if you just want to sell random stuff on the internet that doesn't have a soul. If you want to build a legit brand that you're passionate about and that your audience is passionate about, it's absolutely not too late. And it won't be too late tomorrow, and it won't be too late the day after that, or next year, or the year after that.
I kind of knew the answer to the question before I asked it, which makes me a good interviewer. But there is an element of because I know this is how people feel. They hear stories, and we're about to hear how you built a brand without any fitness knowledge and sold it, and it was turning over $6 million by the end of 3 years. I mean, this is business nirvana. And the last thing I want for my listeners is to feel like, oh yeah, good on him, good on Ben. I couldn't do that. But you just see this as absolutely it's still, Bezos used only 3 or 4 years ago, Bezos was talking about Amazon being in day one, Yeah,
it's still day one. Look, what I don't want to do is I don't want people to get the impression, like you kind of just hinted at there, oh, it's all right for this guy. He's done it. It's too late for me. Or, I've already started, but I'm struggling and it's too late for me to turn it around. Absolutely not the case. I mean, I am a realist. I know most, something like 80% of startups fail. But what I would say is that we are a lucky generation because we live in a time when there's a level playing field. It used to be that those of us who inside are supposed to be entrepreneurs, we didn't have access to this level playing field where we can unleash our entrepreneurial spirit. But, my background before I got into e-commerce and became an entrepreneur was I was an environmental scientist.
Yeah, this is quite bizarre.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd story, right? But what took me from inaction, doing nothing, working for the man, just kind of going through the motions of what you're kind of supposed to do, right? School, university, work for the man. What took me from inaction to action was this idea that I really could, as a normal person with no business experience, no product development experience, no marketing experience, I really could learn and do what I needed to do to build a successful brand because of this level playing field. I literally Googled and YouTubed and podcasted my way through it. And it sounds too good to be true. I don't think it is, but we do have to have a dose of realism. So I think all these quote unquote gurus who I hate, who are like, you can do millions in year one. Some people might do millions in year one, but I don't think that's particularly realistic. I think it's more realistic to say you might do 50 to 150 grand in year one, for instance. And so what I'm saying to people is that there's a tremendous opportunity in e-commerce to build a brand that you're passionate about. Let's keep it real. Let's talk about starting it as something on the side, eventually turning it into a full-time gig and replacing and then surpassing your income. And then one day, perhaps in 3 to 5 years, maybe longer if you choose, it's something you can actually sell for, at that point, life-changing money.
So, okay, well, let's just pull apart how you did that with Bee Spear, because you had no business training, as you said. Your background is in ecology. You're a whale and dolphin nerd. Your words, not mine. You have no interest in fitness, health, or exercise until your mid-20s. Yet you go and build a successful business brand in Beast Gear. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah.
What is Beast Gear? And why did you start it?
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with no interest in health and fitness. I was not a fitness fan as a kid. I was not an athletic kid growing up. I was the nerdy asthmatic kid who was last to be picked for sports at school. But that all changed when I went to university. I got into CrossFit, weightlifting, boxing, and I became kind of like part of the training community. And that's when I spotted a gap in the market. And it seemed kind of unfair to me that here I was doing my best to get fitter and healthier and stronger, but I couldn't really afford decent gear to do so. And I saw other people at CrossFit, older than me, earning money. And so the town I'm from, Aberdeen, is an oil and gas town. So tons of people, lots of money. Mm-hmm. And they had all the best gear, really cool equipment. They seemed like they belonged. And that's when I thought about this gap. Well, what if I could create, I know the markup on these products is enormous. What if I could create a brand of quality gear for people like me, like at a fair price, not just for those with the deepest pockets, but for people like me and other people that I knew, other students who were training with me. And I did absolutely nothing about it. I did nothing for 4 years because I was one, when you like see, maybe you're watching, do you guys have Dragon's Den?
We have Shark Tank.
Shark Tank? Yeah, okay, cool. So we call it Dragon's Den, but Shark Tank. You're watching that and you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Mm-hmm. Or, well, I thought about something like that years ago and did nothing about it. And we do that because we believe, or society has taught us to believe, that entrepreneurs are other people. Entrepreneurship is for other people and that we can't do it. And that building a brand is for Nike. It's not for us, right? That's what I was thinking, whether consciously or subconsciously. It wasn't until 4 years later that I had a heart condition, and I'm fine now, but I had to stop work. I had to stop training. And as a result, my mental health plummeted. My method of Zen, right? My method of de-stressing was to train. I couldn't train. And I was moping around in my apartment and I tidied out my gym bag and looked at all the training gear that I wasn't using. I picked up my jump rope, my skipping rope, and I thought, you know what, this isn't that good. Like, if only it whipped around with a bit more oomph, and if only the adjustment mechanism was less fiddly and the logo was cooler, then that would be great. And then I remembered this idea I'd had from 4 years ago. Beast Gear, right? I'd come up with the brand name when I'd been training. One of the guys at training was like, oh, we beasted it today.
Great name.
And I thought, beasted it, Beast Gear. Cool name for that brand idea, but I still did nothing. It wasn't until I had this heart issue and my wife was training at university for her new degree, and I needed something to do, and she encouraged me to take it up as a distraction as I recovered, a hobby. And 3.5 years later, we're doing $6 million a year. Turned out that I was an entrepreneur after all.
Was it I love the fact that some businesses come from just a great name. I mean, Beast Gear makes sense. You can immediately see it, feel it, hear it.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough for you to take the leap. You had to have a health scare in order for you to go, okay, this is it. We're going to do this.
Totally. And, because I on the one hand, I wish I'd taken action 4 years before, because I think where the brand could have gone would have been, astronomical compared to where it went. But on the other hand, I'm grateful that I even got ill in the first place to be the catalyst to make a change, and kind of release the entrepreneurial genes inside of me. And so what I'm trying to say to people these days is, don't wait for some sort of crisis or enormous change in life to kick you up the bum to take action, but actually take action now. Give yourself permission to take action, because entrepreneurship isn't reserved for those with a business degree or who've had the right experience or have inherited a ton of money to use as startup capital. It can be accessible to all of us, because we live in a time when the playing field is so level.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, the small guy can look like the big guy with the flick of a switch. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, podcasting is a very micro example of that. But, I remember starting podcasting. I always wanted to be on radio. I wasn't. I have subsequently been, but back in the day, this is 14 years old, 15 years ago, I wanted to be on radio. Now, when I found podcasting, I'm like, man, I can have my own show. I don't even need a radio station. That's incredible. So all of a sudden, you're just infinitely bigger than you are. We are living absolutely in incredible times. So Beast Gear, Ben, is a website, boxing, conditioning, strength products that you were buying in, or white labeling? Were you manufacturing anything? I know you are manufacturing now. We'll come to the boxing gloves that you are now involved with. But how did you get started?
Sure. So, I'm looking at the jump rope and I'm like, right, I could do a better job of this. Said to Katie, hey, Katie, I had this idea. Okay, well, go give it a shot. I literally Googled. I didn't know at the time that, many listeners might be aware of Alibaba, where, normal people, Joe Blogs, can find manufacturing partners anywhere in the world. I didn't know that was a thing. So I used Google and eventually arrived at Alibaba. And I was just looking for searching contract manufacturers for sports gear, that type of thing. Came across Alibaba and found a bunch of manufacturers in China. And to cut a long story short, I requested samples from a whole load of them, probably 10, and whittled down in terms of the quality, the professionalism of the communication, how nicely presented the products were, whittled down a short list. And then started working with them to create what I called a Franken product. Franken, like Frankenstein's monster, right? Because I couldn't afford to create something from scratch and create a custom mold or anything like that. But I did want to create a better product than existed on the market. So I was like, okay, well, I liked that bit and I liked that bit. And what if we made that bit longer? And could we improve? Do you have a higher quality bearing we can include here? Until eventually I had something that I thought was pretty good. And I then took it along to my boxing club and also to CrossFit, tested it with friends and with a couple of professional boxers and refined it a bit more until I had something really good. And my idea was to sell these directly into gyms. I hadn't even thought about selling online yet. And particularly the whole Amazon thing. Amazon ended up becoming a really important sales channel. But I was one of those people who thought that when you bought something off of Amazon, you were buying it from Jeff. I didn't know that other people could sell stuff on Amazon. So my idea was to sell these directly into gyms, and I started pitching gyms. And I remember one in particular. I was so nervous. I felt like I really was going on Shark Tank. And this gym owner, this guy, I think he fancied himself as like a ruthless shark because it didn't go well, and he wasn't interested in placing an order, and I was pretty dejected. And it was then that I realized, well, hold on, I can skip out the gyms altogether and sell online.
Excuse the pun.
Yeah. So I started selling through my own website and through Amazon in the UK.
So you started as
And,
Beast Gear started as a skipping rope website. Is that right?
Yeah, we had one product, and it was called the Beast Rope.
See, I love that in itself. Personally, if I'd had the idea for Beast Gear and then gone, you know what, I'd love to create the world's best skipping rope. I'd all of a sudden sort of feel like, oh, now Beast Gear doesn't have a role. But all you did was go, well, we have to start with a product, and it's going to be a skipping rope. Is that kind of how it happened?
Pretty much. I mean, that's all I could afford to do. So it cost me $2,500 to order 500 Beast ropes. I had $2,000. I'd recently sold my drum kit, so that helped. But basically, I then borrowed 500 quid off my parents, who backed me. And I basically said, look, if it doesn't work out, I can slash the price on these and sell them all off and just forget the whole thing. But let's give it a whirl. And from there, the whole thing spun out. So we ended up with the Beast Rope Pro, the Beast Rope Elite, the Beast Rope Fire. And then I developed other products that solved related problems for the same people. So the same people wanted weightlifting products. And by same people, I basically mean me, right? I was my customer, which meant I was able to kind of get the whole thing, right. And I believe people should build brands that they're passionate about. So weightlifting belts, weightlifting knee sleeves, weightlifting wrist wraps, weightlifting straps.
So were you creating all these products, Ben, or there was some that you were just buying in?
They were all my brand, but so I didn't literally own the factory. Third-party factories under contract, and many products quite exclusive to me. So I would improve on their off-the-shelf offerings, and then that would become an exclusive product for me. Couple that I completely designed myself. So there was one, this is quite a fun story actually, a product that I developed called Beast Grips. So people slap that in Google, they'll come up, they'll see a red product. It is they are thick bar adapters. So you put these over barbells and dumbbells, and they make the weights more difficult to lift because the diameter of the barbell becomes thicker. Now, until I launched Beast Grips, there had been one product performing the same function for about 20 years. It was overpriced and not that good. But nobody could come close to it because everybody was scared of their patent. But I knew, having consulted with a patent attorney, that I could design something that performed better, was made of better materials, and I could sell it at a fair price, which was part of the whole ethos of the brand. So I did. And so that was one of the products that I developed myself. And it was quite funny what happened. I started to become the market leader, and they tried to sue me with baloney BS claims. And it was incredibly scary because they're an enormous corporation.
I was going to say, what was it like receiving that letter?
Oh, well, yeah, let me tell you. So I got home from work one day. I'm back at work by this point, but still hadn't taken the brand full time. And there's an official looking letter on my doormat. So I opened it, and I couldn't read it because it was all in German. But I did recognize a photograph of my product, the Beast Grips, and I could see a copy of my competitor's patent attached.
And there was a word, Achtung.
Yeah, Achtung, 50,000 euros, which I could read. And I was like, oh, crap. So I called my IP attorney, Wendy. I was panicking, right? But Wendy didn't panic. And she soon realized what was going on. These guys were trying to bully me out of business. It was pretty obvious that they'd had experience of this. This was why there were no competitors, right? They weren't even German. But they were suing me in Germany because that was one of the countries I was selling in, and they knew they could do that. And they knew that the language barrier would add to the sense of intimidation. They knew I was just a guy on a laptop in an apartment. Anyway, it turned out two things. One is, as well, they knew that my product wasn't infringing on their IP, and we'd already checked that. But this was the best bit. The organization who owned the brand had actually bought the brand from an entrepreneur just like me years before. But that guy had made a mistake. He had his drawings for his patent done on the cheap. They weren't very good. And that corporation had made a mistake when they bought the brand. They hadn't done their due diligence. And basically the drawings in his patent were so poor that they didn't actually protect his own product. So part of our methodology for getting them to go away was to say, A, look, we're not infringing and we're confident we can demonstrate that in court. But B, here are your drawings and here's your product. As you can see, your drawings are not sufficient to protect your product. So if you don't leave Ben alone, we're going to go to court and have your patent invalidated, which will open up the entire market. So you can either play fair with me, or you can
Nice.
play fair with everyone. And they quickly went away. Now, I still lost a ton of money because I tried to get my legal fees back, and they just, there was no recourse, right? They just never responded. And I tried to get the fees back because one of the places I was selling, in addition to my website, was Amazon. And one of the problems with Amazon is if somebody makes a legal claim against you, Amazon just shoots first and asks questions later. So Amazon suspended my product on the basis of no evidence, just them saying that I was infringing their IP. And when I tried to reclaim the money from the lost sales, of course, there was no recourse, and they disappeared. But nevertheless, the victory was satisfying, and that made me really continue to believe in myself and the brand and push on.
And was that the point, Ben, when you thought, okay, this is no longer a side hustle? This is you're getting sales, you're creating products that people want, need, you're proud of, but your belly had been fueled with the fire of competition.
Yeah. The fire of injustice and a kind of a David versus Goliath battle, right?
Yeah.
And it made me even more want to zig where the fitness industry zags, right? So one of the things that I did was I made myself the face of the brand despite being an averagely fit, normal guy. And it worked really well because part of what I was saying with Beast Gear is everyone's welcome. You can be super unfit trying to run your first 5K, but so long as you set some goals and get after them, you're a beast and nobody can tell you otherwise. At the same time, you might be the heavyweight champion of the world. Mm-hmm. You're also a beast. Welcome. Everyone's welcome. It's a bit like that with business, right? You need to give yourself permission to start your business and build your brand. There's nobody who can tell you otherwise. And actually, there's nobody better than you to sell your product because there's nobody out there as passionate as you about your product. It's, I find that's a really easy way to sidestep the competition. If you just be authentic, then immediately you're in blue water because, well, there's no one else like you.
If you had said, I'm going to put my name to this brand, isn't it going to be infinitely harder to sell? Because you're not going to go along any of the imagery, the videos, the training manuals that you have your face and tonality on them, all of a sudden become irrelevant. Yeah,
you raise a good point. I think the answer is no, and here's why. So, and it's funny you should say this because one of the things that I do now is I actually work in the M&A space. So I co-own a brokerage firm. We help e-commerce business owners plan and then execute their exits. And this is a question that I get quite a lot. You can make the brand, you can make yourself the face of the brand so long as the whole brand isn't about you and doesn't rely on you entirely. So for instance, Elon Musk is the face of Tesla, but it's not called Musk Motors. If he left, that'd be all right. On the other hand, if James Dyson left Dyson, I don't think Dyson would be all right. Mm-hmm. And that's not just because it's got his name, but it's because it's absolutely all about him. It's all about his genius. And it's a bit like, let's take Apple. Apple's too big now to fail. But when Steve Jobs left the first time, they were in a big pickle. Mm-hmm. And since he passed away, I would argue that, and also since Tim Cook left, I would argue that they haven't really done very much particularly exciting or innovative. It's just kind of generally more of the same, but they're so big that they can't fail. So he got it to that point that the flywheel was unstoppable. But for somebody, to make it more relatable for somebody with a small business like the kind we're talking about, you can absolutely make yourself the face of the brand and still sell the business. And so here's kind of how that applied to me. By making myself the face of the brand, that worked because people buy from brands, but they connect with other humans. Mm-hmm. And Cialdini wrote about it in his book.
How to win friends and influence people.
This concept of unity, and people connect with other people who are like them, and by doing that, people were more related to me, and they bought from the brand, and they bought into me. And then when it was time to sell the business, I stayed. I wasn't an employee, but I had a consulting deal with the owners who bought the business from me, and was able to advise them for a period of time. Unfortunately, since since then they've taken things in a little bit of a different direction. Nothing really to do with me being the face of the brand, just they're a large private equity backed firm, and perhaps with the benefit of hindsight, they weren't able to keep the soul of the brand going quite so well. But in terms of the attractiveness of the business to a buyer, I don't think that's a problem, so long as the business is set up in such a way that, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's not all going to go under.
When you put your face and name to Beast Gear, Ben, was it hi, I'm Ben Leonard, I'm the founder of Beast Gear, here's my story, or were you more of just a model isn't the right word, but more of just well, no, you know what I mean. Like, were you just a model, modeling the gear, presenting the gear?
No, I made myself part of it. In fact, so if people want to take a look, if you go to the old website, I had to pull up an archived page of it. The reason I made this was to put it. I was talking about this in the book. So if you go to quitstallingbook.com/philosophy, then that will pull up a Wayback Machine page, which is an archive of the philosophy page on the old Beast Gear website. And you can go to the Beast Gear YouTube channel and find the philosophy video as well. I'm pretty sure it's actually on that page, where, it really is me talking about the brand. But when I started that, I'm not, it's all easy for me to say with the benefit of hindsight what a wonderful strategy that was. But when I started it, I wasn't doing it because I thought, this is an incredible marketing approach. No, I was just doing it because it seemed normal, like the right thing to do.
Right.
Well, it's my product, so I'll tell people about me and why I'm doing it. It's like, I say to people, you don't need any business experience to start. And I believe that's true. And I think that one of the advantages we have when we don't have that is that our naivety leads us to do what feels right. And especially when we are our own customer, we just do what makes sense. Well, my customers want to buy into what this brand is all about. So I'll tell them. It just seemed normal. So that's why I did it.
I like that. I'm just looking at the Wayback Time Machine now, and I see what you mean. I see absolutely what you mean. It's funny, I was going to talk about the current Beast Gear site later, but let's talk about it now, because whilst I haven't seen the site that you sold them, it's not much of a site anymore.
No, in fact, I think that, let me just pull it up. I've got a feeling, I was looking at this the other day, I think they might have just redirected it to their Amazon.
Well, something with,
storefront. Yeah, that's what they've done. They've literally, in the last few weeks, this is I've come to terms with this, right? But it used to make me quite upset.
Yes.
In the last few weeks, literally, they have redirected beastgear.co.uk to their Amazon storefront. So they've actually scrapped the direct-to-consumer website, and now it looks like they're only selling through Amazon, which is a real shame. And you can see, I'm looking at it now, and the product ratings on some of the products have dipped, because all the strategies that I had to provide phenomenal customer service have not been implemented anymore. So this is, one of the things you have to accept when you sell your business. When you sell your business, it's not your business anymore.
Gone.
And the new owners will do with it what they will. Now, this is why, with, e-com brokers, that's my M&A firm. What we do is we make sure that the contract that the seller signs, there's provisions in there to protect them, so that if the new owners run it in such a way that could be potentially neglectful, it doesn't negatively impact the earnout of the previous owner, especially if it's a large firm. Because if you've sold it to a large organization, at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, Dave in supply chain doesn't care about your earnout. So we have to make sure that the contract is tight, so that if they screw things up, like they go out of stock on certain products or whatever it might be,
you don't lose out.
You're still going to get paid. But yeah, you have to accept that you're selling the business on. I was fortunate in that the flywheel that I had built for the business kept spinning for a good year and a half, and I was able to consult with them for a decent chunk of time to make sure that the earnouts for the 2 years after I sold the business were hit. But since then, it looks like things have declined. But that's okay. That's up to them. I sold the business, and
of course, it's their decision.
That's how it works.
Ben, you got it to turning over $6 million within 3 years, in the third year. Was there one lever in particular that you pulled that gave you a hockey stick inflection?
Yep. I jumped through hoops that my competitors couldn't be bothered to. And there was one big hoop that I did. So it was 2017. I was selling in the UK. The UK had made the worst decision ever to leave the European Union. We had the referendum on Brexit in 2016, but it wasn't enacted until 2020 or 2021. So we're still in the EU. Amazon, which was one of my sales channels, in addition to my website, had a pan-EU program. So at that point in time, I was just selling in the UK, but I was getting sales in Europe because somebody would go on Amazon in Germany and they could buy it, but it would take a few days to get shipped over from the UK. But I could enroll in this program where Amazon would move my inventory into their fulfillment centers right across Europe for me, so that, somebody in Dusseldorf or somebody in Seville could order it on Prime and get it fast.
Wow.
And that was going to make my products appear much higher in the rankings and give them free shipping on their own native Amazon platforms. But to do this, to get onto this program, I had some big hoops to jump through. I had to register for VAT in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, Czech Republic.
Pain.
Yeah, pain, right? And doing so, they've made it a bit easier now. Well, actually, no, it's hard again because of Brexit, but doing so was not easy. Tons of forms, often in other languages. Often you had to submit translated documents, which could only be translated by somebody with a particular translation qualification. For Spain, this was hilarious. I quite enjoyed the ridiculousness of this.
Yeah.
For Spain, I had to get a document notarized. And as part of that process, it had to be stamped and sealed with a medieval style wax seal.
Love it.
Yeah, it was so cool. I mean, ridiculous, right?
Is this a skit from the Holy Grail, or are you actually telling a true story?
This is the truth, right? Actually, a medieval style wax. The guy melts a bit of wax off and then stamps it with a stamp. It was hilarious. I was like, it's 2017. What's going on? Anyway, so by jumping through all these hoops where my competitors couldn't be bothered, overnight, I basically doubled my sales. And then I started to build relationships with customers right across Europe in their language. That was critical. My competitors weren't bothering to do that. But I was working with translators to build up all these custom templates of ways to communicate with my customers. And I was also using really strong AI translation tools for the time. And not just to literally translate things, but actually to translate things and then use translating something from English into German isn't enough. You have to translate it into German and then tweak it for the German consumer style, which is very different than an Italian customer. Germans are very technical, for instance.
It's vastly
Italians, the cliches are true. Italians, it's all about emotive, flowery language, right? Yep. They love to wave their arms around when they talk. It's kind of the same when they read. And when I did that and built relationships with my customers everywhere, I just rinsed and repeated what I did in the UK, and that was the inflection point. And that's what suddenly the flywheel was unstoppable.
I just love that learning, Ben. Do what you would do what your competitors are too lazy to do.
Yep.
It's a great thing to consider. Just a question to sit and ponder over a long morning and a coffee, I think, because there'd be plenty. There'd be plenty.
Totally.
We so often think, we're all doing the same things. It's hard to find that point of difference.
Yeah. I call it the Sonic the Hedgehog strategy, because you have to jump through the hoops.
Yeah, okay, because I've heard you talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, so that's the learning, jumping through the hoops. Go where others fear to tread, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
You built another fascinating thing, which is there's money in the list. You used a chatbot to grow your subscriber list, and you built a bunch of raving fans on Instagram. Two different strategies, I'm guessing, although is there a fundamental that underpins both? Yeah,
they were linked. So a lot of my competitors were, and still are for other brands that I'm building, they're stuck on a hamster wheel. So they work hard to get a sale, and then they work hard to get another sale, and again, and again, and again, and again. And they've forgotten the customer that they've just acquired. There's nobody easier to get to buy from you than somebody who's already bought from you. So what I would do is this. You would receive the product, and within the packaging or some sort of flyer or insert within the packaging, you would be given an incentive to follow a link or a QR code. So to give you an example, my boxing hand wraps. These are like bandages that would go over your hands and under your boxing gloves to help protect your hands. So I would say, look, I've made a video for you to teach you how to properly wrap your hands. Well, Somebody who's just bought these wants to know how to properly wrap their hands. So of course they follow the link. They would land at a chatbot. So now they're subscribed to my chatbot where I can market to them in future. And the first thing I do is give them what I promised, which is a link to the video.
When you say land at a chatbot, the QR code, that takes you to...
Oh, it was a Facebook Messenger chat.
Okay.
But instead of chatting with a friend, you're chatting with a Beast Gear...
Got it. Bot.
Chatbot. And it would say, here's your the video to show you how to wrap your hands. You click the video, it takes you to YouTube. And lo and behold, you learn how to wrap your hands. You're now on the YouTube channel. You're probably going to subscribe to that, where I'm now going to market to you more stuff, provide tons of value, helpful information, but also you're going to see my new products. Within the chatbot, I'm also going to say to you, hey, why not follow us on Instagram? If you post a picture of yourself with your boxing hand wraps, every month somebody wins a prize for the best picture, and it's like $200 voucher. They go and post on Instagram. In there, not only do we every day we search for the posts, and then we don't just like the post. We read the person's profile for 30 seconds, a minute. We learn something about them, and we send them a private message, and we start building a relationship. Hey Tim, saw your post of you.
Who's we?
My team. So it was me and the business when I sold it was me and 3 part-time freelancers.
Okay.
So I built out all the processes and the templates and then gave it to my team. So it would be, hey Tim, saw your post last week of you and your squat personal best. Solid effort,
Fantastic.
Keep going. Build, have a chat, right? Build it up. By the way, would love it if you'd go leave us a review. Would really help. You leave a review. Are you legend? Here's 10% off on our website. Off you go. You probably go to our website. We get your email address. Now we can communicate with you there.
I just want to play that through because I love the idea. It seems like a lot of heavy lifting. Excuse the pun.
Sure.
But that's okay because you've got, you're trying to build a brand. So someone's brought some gloves. When you get the tape, when they get the tape, there's a QR code. The QR code takes them to a Facebook Messenger bot that says, great stuff. Let me watch the video. Let me take you to the video that then shows you how to wrap your hands. You wrap your hands, then I'm a bit lost here. I know what you did. You went to their Instagram and sent them a message commenting on something only they did. Where's the gap from watching the video to...
So the videos doesn't necessarily matter for that, but basically within every product and also in the chatbot, we would encourage people to post them and their products, any of our products on Insta.
Yeah. Got it.
And every day we would check for this and then communicate with them and build a relationship. And then later, when I want to launch a new product, I just come back to my private messages, my DMs, and I'm like, Tim, we've actually just got this new weightlifting belt. Would you like to get it for half price? Of course you would, right? And then I can launch the product cheaply. But here was the other beauty about that particular example. When I sent all that traffic to that YouTube video of how to wrap your hands for boxing, it sent a message to YouTube's algorithm that people were enjoying that video. So YouTube started to show it to people who hadn't even bought my boxing hand wraps. They were just searching YouTube for how to wrap your hands for boxing. And within the description for that video, guess what? There was a link back to my product. And what's fantastic about that is that was how I was acquiring new customers. So I did no promotion of that video, no paid ads, nothing. And to date, that video's had 6 million views. And it was me at my kitchen table wrapping my hands.
Oh, I love those stories. That's great.
Yeah. You just got to understand how the algorithm works.
How much of that, there is some heavy lifting in there. That's okay.
Sure.
You could have automated it, but there wouldn't have been the charm. Would it have been different? It's September 2023 as we do this interview. Would AI have changed the way you went about that, Ben? Or would you, maybe for the bad, because it would have removed that personal touch. AI can't go to someone's Insta and say, hey, I noticed you were lifting 200 kg. Well done.
Yeah. So you're right. So first of all, it was heavy lifting, but it wasn't too bad because we had systems and processes and a team of people to do it. So even when we were doing $6 million a year in sales, we could do it. And I'm a big fan of finding things that don't scale that other people are scared to do and then just brute forcing it until it does scale. Would AI have changed that particular process? Perhaps. For instance, you could ask ChatGPT for advice on what to say back to people.
Yes.
But you could also build a bot in a tool like, say, make.com, which people may have heard of. It's a bit like Zapier.
Oh, yeah.
You could build a tool to help you do that automatically. It might be tricky. You could maybe get it to search for hashtags, and I think there's too much risk that it's going to get it wrong. I'm more of a fan of getting humans to do that, but I am a huge fan of AI.
Well, no doubt. Well, no, not no doubt. Many aren't. There's Zoomers and there's Doomers. I heard that today when it comes to AI. You're either going to zoom in and really embrace it, or you're going to go, no, end of the world, no use.
Well, the trouble is, I mean, like everyone, like many people, I have a fear about how it could get out of hand. But at the end of the day, for little old me, I don't have a choice. It's here. So I might as well embrace it because my competitors sure are. Mm-hmm. I use it, but I think it presents us with opportunities as well, because I think what's going to happen is people are going to start to crave more and more real human experiences.
I think you're right.
So if we can find a way to present ourselves in that light, people will gravitate towards us and our brands.
When everyone's shouting, whisper, Ben. That's the idea. Ben, I don't mean to bring the conversation down, but it is worth considering, because we started with the elephant in the room saying, is it too late? I don't want to paint a picture of everyone can start a business and be turning over 6 million in 3 years. There is an underbelly of e-commerce, a dark underbelly. And I know you talk about loneliness, you talk about imposter syndrome, you talk about the dark side. Do you want to just touch on that?
Sure, yeah. A lot of the sort of the gurus who you'll see them on Instagram in front of flashy cars and buy my course for 10 grand and I'll make you rich. What they fail to point out is, it's not as easy as that. It's hard, it is exciting, but many of us are working on laptops in spare rooms. It's easy to become lonely. I think that happened a lot during the pandemic, and many of us have just kind of fallen into that habit. And it's easy when we are lonely and we see all these other people, particularly on social media, which, social media, people just post the good stuff.
Absolutely.
They're not posting everything that's going on in their lives. They're not posting the absolute headache they've had with their supplier or their freight forwarder or whatever's going on. And so it's easy to think that it's going so well for everybody else, but it's not going well for you. And it's also easy to fall into the trap of imposter syndrome, which is the very thing that can stop us from starting in the first place. I'm not qualified. I don't have the experience. It's not for me. Other people build brands. Entrepreneurship is for people with business degrees. But actually what we need to do is give ourselves permission to start. Because if you think about your favorite brands, well, once upon a time, they didn't exist. They were just an idea in the founder's head.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they existed. And why did they exist? Because the founder gave himself permission to start. And I think a lot of times we're held back by the belief, whether conscious or subconscious, that A, we can't do it, and B, that other people that we care about, whose opinions we care about, our friends, our family, our colleagues, are going to judge us negatively. And, I found myself sort of downplaying what I was doing, even when it was going well. I just sort of sell this stuff on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't true. It was a legit brand with fans, and it made a positive impact on people's lives. And if you it's important that, okay, we accept that we're starting this on the side because it's not sustainable to just quit our job and go straight into this. But we're treating it like a real business. We're not treating it like a side hustle. Because I think that when we treat it like that, when we call it that, we're immediately framing it and limiting it and treating it with disrespect.
Yeah.
So that we don't, and ourselves with disrespect. So
Doesn't matter if it disappears,
enough.
just a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. And if we actually frame it as a real business, then we give it the best shot at success. And I would just encourage people to seek out other like-minded entrepreneurs, whether online or in real life, probably both, and connect with them, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all need that. And that is so, so important. And that helps us to not dip into the dark side of e-commerce.
I totally agree with that. Now, you've got the entrepreneurial bug, Ben. Maybe you may still be a dolphin and whale nerd. I hope you are, because that's a beautiful thing to be. But you've got biacosports.com, where you're making and selling boxing gloves online.
Yeah.
You've got a baby sling. I haven't seen a website for that, but you kindly sent me a video of you road testing that with your beautiful baby hanging off the front of you. Clearly, that's another. What's happening here? Are you just taking shots and hoping one will land, or have you done something that we don't? Can you not help yourself? Shouldn't you be in a hammock with a MacBook on a tropical island, not in Aberdeen?
combo of all of that. Absolutely. I mean, in a hammock on a vacation occasionally, but
Yes.
that'd be totally boring to do all the time. Yeah. So look, the boxing thing. So of course, Beast Gear sold boxing gloves. I had a non-compete, but after that ended, what happened was I love this actually. A competitor of mine contacted me and booked me for consulting, and indeed I consulted with him. Turned out most of my competitors were on the other side of the world. This guy lived 15 miles away.
No.
We got to know each other really well, and in the end, we decided that we'd set up a business together. He would run the day-to-day. I would mentor him and put in the startup capital, and that's where Byaco Sports was born. And then, so we spotted an opportunity there to a bit like Beast Gear, high-quality gloves, reasonable price, and because we spotted that many of the competitors in that space are just large corporations with layers of bureaucracy who don't understand what it's like to connect with real people and tell a story, we believe we can outmarket them like a speedboat running laps around a tanker, right? Mm-hmm. That's a pretty new brand, and we'll see where it goes, but it's going well, and we're chuffed with our start. And then the baby brand, yeah, so this has been several years in the making. I'm a little frustrated it's not ready yet. But you have to get your product right. You can't outmarket a crap product, especially when it comes to children and safety and that type of thing.
Well, you can sell it once.
Yeah, before you get found out. Yeah. So I was frustrated with the baby carriers that we used with our daughter. So I decided to make a better one. Then my son came along and he kind of road tested it, and now he's too old. Thankfully, we're having a third kid in December, so that kid can model it. But yeah, I've been developing a baby carrier with a co-founder of mine. And we're going to build out an entire brand of products for active families, starting with a baby carrier, and then we'll move up as the child gets older.
Oh,
and
wow. What an interesting niche.
The gap I spotted was this: if I go to an outdoor hiking store, they have the backpacks that you put toddlers in, but they don't have baby carriers. If I want to buy a baby carrier, I have to buy it from the baby store, and it looks, flowery, feminine, generically babyish. And we wanted to make something for mums and dads and uncles and aunts and grandparents who are active. They go for a hike, they go on a city break. It's the thing they should have bought before the toddler carrier, which for some reason nobody's done yet. And it's also made from 100% recycled materials, including plastic from the ocean. And I'm doing that partly because I care about that, and partly because I know that we're going to have to do that one day anyway. So we might as well start as we meet to go on.
You are a category pirate. I interviewed Chris Lockhead about 2 weeks ago. He has a business out of the States called Category Pirates, and he's all about, establishing new categories. The one you talked about then was, active families. I mean, that's sort of like it's almost a new niche, isn't it? Like, instead of looking at baby products, no, let's grow with a family from the moment the kid's born, put them in a sling, and clearly then you're going to map the next 18 years of a child's life. I love it.
Yeah, totally. There's so many ways.
And you've got 3 kids you've got a research team, mate. Your whole family's a tax deduction.
I'll have to run that past my accountant to see what they say.
I love it. Ben, tell me, in bringing Byaco Sports to life and this other idea, Byaco Sports is further down the track because it does have a website. You're applying learnings from Beast Gear. Are you pleasantly surprised at what you know, or has it dated, or are you finding the world's changed since you made Beast Gear a success?
Yeah. So what I know, the principles will stand the test of time, but the nitty-gritty tactics change because platforms change and technology changes. But you can apply the principle to new platforms and new technology all the time. So it's the answer is both, but it's relatively easy to apply the same principles to new platforms, or at least work with my co-founders, teach them the principle, and they get in and do the nitty gritty sometimes. Although I still enjoy getting stuck in. It's
interesting you called your book "Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand." You don't need an MBA to crush it in e-commerce. Clearly, it's an e-commerce book. Clearly, it's a book about how to start and build an e-commerce brand. But your key focus has been around almost the concept of procrastination. Is there a reason for that?
I sat on my idea for 4 years and did nothing. And I don't think I'm special or unique. I think.
Why didn't you
people
write a
do
book
that.
on procrastination?
Because I'd probably just procrastinate and not do it.
Yeah, that's right. Not sure.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in procrastination. All I know is I did it. I did, and I know why I did it. Because society taught me to do it, and because we live in a world where we just follow the path. Although I'm pleased that entrepreneurship is becoming cooler. Like it is, previously entrepreneurship was weird. Only,
Mate, it was
only
a dirty,
weird people did that.
A dirty word. How old are you?
35.
Well, I'm 56, Ben, and I can assure you, back in my day, back in the olden days when things were black and white and sepia, entrepreneurship was a really, really dirty word.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
you didn't want to be
Can't
labelled
do that
one.
to you and your family. Yeah.
That's right.
You need security.
Yeah. Now it's a badge of honor, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. And I would argue that hanging your hat on shadowy shareholders in large corporations who don't really care about you is potentially riskier than actually giving something a shot, especially if you give the thing a shot while you still have a job. And obviously you're going to need, there's no doubt about it, you're going to need some startup capital. You don't need eye-watering amounts, and you only want to. It's like all the adverts say for betting. Only gamble what you can afford to lose. But when you make calculated risks and do the work, and I talk about this in the book, do the work to understand who your people are, what problems they need to solve, and how you can position your product to do that, then you really mitigate that risk, and your chances of success, I think, are high.
Great story, Ben. Thanks so much for sharing it, mate. Everyone, quitstallingbook.com/SBBM. That would be the acronym for Small Business Big Marketing. Ben's kindly put a bunch of bonuses there. So I encourage you to head over to quitstallingbook.com/SBBM. Ben, I really enjoyed that story, mate, and I am looking forward to getting you back in about a year's time to see how Biaco Sports is progressing, and the baby sling as well.
I would love that. That would be great. Thanks, Tim.
Well, there you go, team. Beast Gear founder Ben Leonard. I love his advice around doing what your competition is too lazy to do. Genius question to ask yourself. In fact, I'd go and do that. Do it with your team and write down all the things they're too lazy to do, not your team, your competition, and then go and do them. Hey, and be sure to grab an e-copy of his book, quitstallingbook.com/SBBM. is where you will find it. quitstallingbook.com/SBBM. And I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. If you'd like to join the discussion about this episode, then head over to Facebook and join for free, gratis, the Small Business Big Marketing Tribe. I'll see you on the inside. Righto, team, it's time for you to take action on what you've learned, because ideas remain exactly that, without action. Please support the work I do for small businesses by joining the small business owning membership that I have over at patreon.com/marketing podcast. It helps do what I do, and there's a free 7-day trial for the silver tier. So you've got nothing to lose and plenty to gain, because there's lots of marketing goodies inside that. Patreon.com/marketing podcast. Next week, you and I catch up with a chef who sold his real estate marketing business for $180 million. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app, where there are 653 more chats with successful business founders. Big thanks to editor Sam Heathcote for stitching the marketing gold together, and to our in-house rock and roller, Lockie Doley, for the music bed. But most importantly, thank you to you for lending me your ears, giving me your time, and tuning in to this little old podcast. Thank you. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.